Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to today's Friday Reflections on this Friday, the 15th of July, 2022. I hope you are well, wherever you are tuning into this from, and having a good day. My past few days could have been a bit better if I'm honest. Such is life. One thing I will put out there for people is be aware there is a spate of people stealing the catalytic converters from cars. So when you park your car up, sometimes people will lift up the car and steal the catalytic converter from underneath it before they let it go. So just, obviously, if anybody does that, it can create a lot of hassle for you, a lot of problem, as well as either damaging the car or possibly even making it unroadworthy and unfixable. So just be aware there is this issue out there at the moment. But that's not what I wanted to discuss with you today. I started reading a little bit from this book, The Path of Peace, last week, which was a gift from Shaykh Abdallah bin Bayyah through his son. And I started reading some of this last week, and I'd like to continue from where I left off because it's a very interesting topic that we were discussing. And this is on page 10 of the book. And on page 10, Shaykh Abdallah bin Bayyah discusses Islam's historical contribution to peace. The Shaykh says, without peace, there can be no rights, because the loss of peace is the loss of all rights, including the right to exist. Therefore, peace is the highest purpose. Peace is the highest purpose and regulates all of the other rights. A careful examination confirms that no purpose is more important than peace. A proof of this is as follows. Peace is one of the Almighty's names, Salam, as well as the name of his paradise that he has prepared for his believers. It is also his greeting for his believers in this life and in the hereafter. His names include Al-Malik, Al-Qudus, Al-Salam, and Al-Mu'min, the absolute ruler, the pure one, the source of peace, and the inspirer of faith. And he invites to the abode of peace, Quran. He greets the people in the Garden of Eden with, peace unto you for that which you persevered in patience. And he says, peace will be their greeting therein. Prophet Abraham, God's peace and blessings upon him, received the angels with greetings of peace. They said, peace. He answered, peace. Also, he offers words of peace to his father. Abraham said, peace be upon you. I will pray to my Lord for your forgiveness, for he is to me most gracious. Prophet Jesus, God's peace and blessings upon him, says that he is surrounded by peace. So peace is on me the day I was born, the day that I die, and the day that I shall be raised up to life again. The Christian hymn, Gloria in excelsis Deo, also says, Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill to all people, which is based upon something in the gospel. Prophet Moses, God's peace and blessings upon him, whose greeting Shalom is still used in Hebrew, said to the Pharaoh, Send forth, therefore, the children of Israel with us, and afflict them not with a sign. Indeed, we have come from thy Lord, and peace to all who follow guidance. The maker of order, the Almighty and Exalted, ordered his worshippers to seek peace. But if the enemy inclines towards peace, do also incline towards peace and trust in God, for he is the one that hears and knows all things. Quran. He also ordered the believers to enter the abode of peace. O you who believe, enter into Islam wholeheartedly and follow not the footsteps of the evil one, for he is to you an avowed enemy. Quran. He also described his pious worshippers as answering abuse with peace. Answering abuse with peace. This is something many Muslims don't practice today as much as they used to. And when the ignorant address them, they say, peace. And when they hear vain talk, they turn away therefrom and say, to us our deeds, and to you yours. Peace be to you. We seek not the ignorant. Quran. We also salute our Prophet, God's peace and blessings upon him, during our daily prayers with peace. These Quranic verses indicate peace, that peace precedes justice and refers to words, behavior, values, and principles. I mean, it's a very important point that's mentioned there, and something that I highlighted many years ago. And sometimes people criticize me for it, even though I'm reading from Quran, where it says in the Quran that when the ignorant address you, that you should say to them peace. And when you hear, talk that's not nice, it's bad, maybe they're mocking you and stuff like this, then you should say to those people, whether you say it openly or not, sometimes you might not want to. Sometimes you might, depending upon circumstances. If it puts you in danger, it might not be so good idea to do that. If you're in a fairly safe place, then speak up, or if there's a group of you. But what the Quran advises us to say, what Allah advises us to say in the Quran, when people are behaving that way, is to you your deeds, and to us our deeds. Peace be to you. Even though the way they behaved is appalling, we should say to them, peace be to you. And we don't seek ignorant people. The Shaykh continued, the life of the Prophet, God's peace and blessings upon him, teaches us the importance he placed on peace and how he prioritized it over other basic rights, as is shown by the following examples. In the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, the Prophet, God's peace and blessings upon him, and his companions relinquished their duty to perform a pilgrimage, a Hajj, to Mecca for the sake of peace, even though they were already in a state of ihram. How many people today, if they were in a state of ihram and they were on the borders of Mecca, and for some unknown reason they couldn't continue, would be comfortable to do that and to walk away. Yet the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu, he instructed his companions precisely that thing. And it's true, some of the companions, they were not happy about this. But they trusted in the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu and they followed what he said. But some of them did voice their disappointment with it, which is normal. It's normal to voice disappointment. But then what do you do then? Well, they understood that they now had a peace treaty with Mecca. Now, we all know the history. Mecca later dishonored that, but at least for a period of time, they had peace with Mecca. The leaders of Mecca had signed a treaty with them, calling for peace. Now, the Meccans, in that particular case, they disobeyed it after a period of time. But not just because they did it doesn't mean other people would. And you think the Prophet Muhammad, he probably knew that they might do that, but he still made the treaty with them, and he called it a great victory. We need to study these things and understand. His companions, the Sahaba Ikram, were prepared to go to war against the polytheists who prevented them from entering the holy sanctuary to perform their religious duty. But the Prophet ﷺ, negotiated with them and signed a treaty which most of his companions, even Umar, may God be pleased with him, considered unjust. Ali, may God be pleased with him, who was writing the treaty, was angered when the people of Quraysh objected to the Almighty's names, most gracious, most merciful, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, and to the description of Muhammad, God's peace and blessings be upon him, as messenger. As they said, we do not know what is meant by in the name of God, most gracious and most merciful. And we do not recognize you as a messenger. Indeed, instead, write your name and your father's name. And this is the amazing thing. The Prophet ﷺ, he did that. The Prophet ﷺ, God's peace and blessings upon him, told Ali to strike out these words. Ali answered, I will not be the one to strike them out. The Prophet, God's peace and blessings be upon him, then took the parchment from him and struck out these words with his own hands. See, Ali, may Allah bless him, he loved the Prophet so much, he could not strike out the words. He just could not bring himself to strike out the words of Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim, or that the Prophet Muhammad was the messenger of God. He just couldn't bring himself to do it because he had so much love for the Prophet Muhammad. Nonetheless, the Prophet Muhammad took the parchment from him, and Rasulullah himself struck out these words in order to get the peace. I mean, you think about that. In order to get this treaty signed, this is the value that the Prophet Muhammad put on creating peace, that he would even strike out names of Allah and that he's a messenger. He would strike it out from a treaty. SubhanAllah. Have you ever thought about that before? That's remarkable. Especially striking out Allah's names. This is the Prophet of Allah. Peace and blessings be upon him. Probably in none or few other circumstances would he ever consider such a thing. But in this particular instance, the Prophet felt it's so important to write this treaty and work for peace that he would even strike out the names of Almighty Allah. One of the other conditions stated that the Prophet, God's peace and blessings upon him, should return to the Quraysh, any of their people, even if they were Muslim, while the reverse was not the case. Offended by the injustice, Umar, may God be pleased with him, said, "Why should we be humbled because of our religion?" This treaty teaches us the importance of peace. The Prophet, God's peace and blessings upon him, responded to Umar, "By the one in whose hands is my soul, if they, i.e. the Quraysh, ask me anything which will respect the ordinances of God, I will grant it to them." Sahih al-Bukhari. In his explanation of this hadith, Al-Katabi says, the ordinances of God are to avoid fighting in the holy sanctuary, to tend towards peacefulness, and to refrain from spilling blood. Like that. See, Islam does permit fighting in certain circumstances. But Allah loves peace. Allah loves us to try and work things out in better ways, not resorting to fighting if we can find a better way. Today, what we would refer to as diplomacy. Imam al-Nawawi explains the hadith on the Treaty of Hudaybiyah as follows. The scholars have said the benefits of this treaty can be seen from its admirable fruits. It led to the conquest of Mecca and all of its people converting to Islam and embracing God's religion in vast numbers. Prior to this treaty, they did not mix with Muslims and were not exposed to the Prophet Islam's teachings. But when the Treaty of Hudaybiyah was signed, they came to Medina and mixed with the Muslims, and the Muslims went to Mecca and offered advice to those who lived there and shared with them details about the Prophet ﷺ, including his miracles, the signs of his prophecy, the righteousness of his behavior, and the beauty of his way. Their souls developed a tendency towards faith, and some embraced Islam in the period between the Treaty of Hudaybiyah and the conquest of Mecca. The rest embraced Islam on the day of the conquest, when the tribe of Quraysh embraced Islam. The other Arab desert tribes followed suit. The Almighty says, when triumph comes from God, you will see the people embracing God's religion in throngs. You shall glorify and praise your Lord and implore him for forgiveness. He is the Redeemer. Hence, God, the most glorious and exalted, referred to this treaty as a victory. We have so far established that peace precedes other rights, that the consequences of war are worse than the consequences of concession, and that peace creates opportunities for religious and secular interests that are preferable to the opportunities created by war. During the invasion of Al-Muraisi, when a man from the Muhajirin emigrants struck a man from the Ansar helpers, and each of them called upon his people to fight. The Prophet, God's peace and blessings upon him, considered their proclamations to be from the times of Jahiliyyah, the days of ignorance, and said, leave it, as it is a detestable thing. Some of the munafiqun, hypocrites, said very offensive things. The Almighty says about them, they say, if we return to Medina, surely the more honorable element will expel them from the baser. But honor belongs to God and his apostle and to the believers, but the hypocrites know not. In a famous story, the Prophet, God's peace and blessings upon him, then left to avoid this tribulation. In addition, the Prophet, God's peace and blessings upon him, called Khalid's withdrawal during the Battle of Mu'tah a victory, as he said, finally, the flag was taken by one of God's swords, i.e. Khalid bin al-Walid, and God gave them, i.e. the Muslims, victory. Further proof can be found in the Prophet's testimony, God's peace and blessings upon him, regarding his grandson, Hassan ibn Ali, may God be pleased with him, and his father, when he described him as a noble for relinquishing his right to the caliphate for the sake of peace. The Prophet, God's peace and blessings upon him, said, this son of mine is a Sayyid, i.e. a noble one, and I hope God may reconcile two parties of my community by means of him. This is narrated by al-Bukhari and others. The people of Hijaz and Iraq, who followed Hassan's father Ali, may God be pleased with them both, had pledged their allegiance to him, and he remained caliph over the lands of Iraq and beyond for 7 months. But then he made peace with Muawiyah and handed him the caliphate, on the condition that he remain in his family following Muawiyah's death. The negotiations between them continued until Muawiyah sent him a parchment on which to write the conditions, which he promised he would accept. Hassan's companions were eager to fight the people of the Levant, but Hassan famously said, I swear I would never have taken leadership of Muhammad's people, God's peace and blessings upon him, if I had known that this would lead to bloodshed. SubhanAllah, this is Imam Hassan, Prophet Muhammad's grandson. He said he would never have taken leadership if he'd known that it would lead to bloodshed. Think about that. In addition, no one from the family of the Prophet, God's peace and blessings upon him, participated in the battle of Hara against Yazid's army. According to Ibn Kathir, Abu Ja'far Muhammad al-Baqir ibn Ali Zain al-Abidin, may God be pleased with both of them, narrated that no one from the families of Abu Talib and Abu Muttalib participated in the battle of Hara, and that he was with his father Zain al-Abidin in Medina for the sake of peace. 4. Islam established the signing of treaties to restore peace. Prior to this practice, wars between Arab tribes could persist for decades. Decades, literally. Before the Prophet ﷺ, before Islam. For example, the Basas War between the sons of Taghlib and the sons of Bakr, who shared the same father, lasted 40 years. 40 years, can you imagine today? The Prophet, God's peace and blessings upon him, signed dozens of treaties for the sake of spreading peace in the Arabian Peninsula. The last of which was signed in Tabuk to secure the Roman borders without bloodshed. The Prophet, God's peace and blessings upon him, guaranteed Johanna bin Ruba, Prince of Johanna bin Ruba, Prince of Ayla, security at sea and on land in return for peace. He also reconciled with the people of Adru and Jeba without bloodshed, according to Al-Halabi's account of the Prophet's biography. God's peace and blessings upon him. The Almighty has placed great value on treaties based on transparency and good intentions, but the treaties are not dissolved with those pagans with whom you have entered into alliance and who have not subsequently failed you. So even the Prophet ﷺ, who made treaties with people who were pagans, if they kept their treaties, there was no war after them. Those who kept their treaties, the Prophet ﷺ always honored those treaties. It was only when people broke treaties that the Prophet ﷺ did something about it. So the Prophet ﷺ's preference was for making treaties and to have diplomatic and trade relations with people rather than war. And you can't say that all of these would have been perfect, but as long as they were within what they'd agreed. So fulfill your engagements with them to the end of their term, for God loves the righteous. This is in Quran. With the constitution of Medina, the Prophet, God's peace and blessings upon him, established the foundations of peace among those of different races and faiths, and through treaties and agreements, he extended peace all the way to the borders of the Arabian Peninsula. Throughout history, Muslims followed the example of the Prophet ﷺ by spreading peace through treaties and agreements. Over several centuries, they signed more than 1,000 treaties and agreements with Europe, thus contributing to the establishment of world peace. During the Middle Ages, by protecting the Europeans from Mongol conquests and by absorbing attacks from the Mongols before they embraced Islam, Muslims acted as a barrier between East and West. 5. Islam abolished the practice of blood vengeance from pre-Islamic times and established that rulers and governments had the right to seek revenge or to proclaim jihad. Denying individuals these rights promoted peace. So, you follow, it's like, as an individual, you can't declare a war, a jihad, or to seek vengeance or anything like that. You have to go through the law. As an individual, you can petition your king or your president or whoever your politicians are, your leaders, and ask them if you feel you've been slighted by someone from another group, and it's up to them, either them or you go through the legal courts. But Islam stopped individuals from being able to declare jihad. Only the leaders could do it. Whereas this was quite different from before Islam, because from before Islam, maybe someone from a fairly powerful family where they'd all trained themselves up, they'd just start another war with another family and another village and another. It was just crazy. Islam stopped that. Only the leader of the whole people could choose to go to war. And they had to have good reasons for it as well. Islam established rules that govern familial relationships as well as the relationships between governments and citizens. Examples of this include the religious command that children must obey and honor their parents. The parents must honor children and provide them with a proper education. That citizens must obey their governments. And that rulers must secure justice for the people. So it's each of these, you see, it's both ways. Parents must respect the children. Children must respect the parents. Well, actually, the other way around. Children must respect the parents and honor their parents, and parents must look after and also honor their children. It's a mirror, both ways. Citizens must obey their governments, but governments must secure justice for the people. So, of course, if the governments are not, securing justice, then people have a right to, put some process in place, not a war, but some process in place to try to secure their rights from the government, to remind the government of their obligations. But Islam taught like this, so everybody have rights to each other and to respect them, which was quite different from pre-Islamic times. Rather than enforcing humiliation or subservience, these rules establish behavior based on consciousness, awareness, and good character, all of which contribute to the dignifying relationships and establishing a cohesive and peaceful society. These rules are based on a spirit of tolerance rather than a perpetual struggle, as described by Hegel, who argued that conflict is the driving force of the world. And look where that got us. Hegel, communism. Islam established the concept of repelling evil with good deeds as a guiding principle for establishing peace. Repel evil with that which is best and respond to evil with good. This means that you should not only voluntarily relinquish a right, but forgive those who have treated you unjustly. Extend yourself to those who have shunned you, and give to those who have denied you. I'm not saying this is easy, but this is what Islam actually teaches. And Islam brought this in within society after its establishment within the Middle East and then other lands. 6. Islamic jurisprudence also lays out a detailed, integral system of rulings for resolving conflict by peaceful and rational means. This can be seen in the chapter on reconciliation, which is an important chapter found in all books of Islamic jurisprudence. Reconciliation has been defined as an agreement by which conflict is resolved. Most scholars consider it a recommended act, whereas the Maliki school consider it obligatory, considers it wajib. If there is a fear of division or evil, in which case the judge should avoid passing a sentence and call for reconciliation, as previously discussed. The legitimacy of reconciliation has been confirmed in the Quran, the Sunnah, and through the legally binding consensus ijma of the Mujaddid Imams. Al-Zahid al-Bukhari says reconciliation eliminates division between the believers, whether existing or expected, and it often happens at times of conflict. Conflict is the reason for division, and reconciliation eradicates and removes it. Hence, it is one of the best of deeds. God, the Almighty, also called for reconciliation in many of his verses. In most of their secret talks, there is no good. But if one exhorts to a deed of charity or justice or conciliation between men, secrecy is permissible. The jurist Abu al-Walid bin Rushd explains that this verse applies to blood, money, honor, and everything else that might lead to conflict between Muslims. Reconciliation applies to the individual as well as political conflicts. It applies equally to marital strife, revolutions, and international wars. Scholars have identified 5 types of reconciliation. 1. Reconciliation with a non-Muslim state that engages in war with a Muslim state, which is called a truce or a covenant in the Quran. 2. Reconciliation between the government and the brigands, such as what happened with the Khawarij, which is also mentioned in the Quran. 3. Reconciliation between husband and wife. 4. Reconciliation on criminal issues. And 5. Reconciliation on financial issues. The following definitions are integral to this branch of Islamic jurisprudence. Takrim, arbitration, the passing of a judgment to resolve conflicts between two parties. This may be done by a judge or by the parties themselves. Ibra, absolution, when a person relinquishes his rights from another person. There are 2 aspects to the relationship between reconciliation and absolution. First, reconciliation usually occurs after the conflict, whereas conflict is not necessary for absolution. Second, reconciliation may include absolution if it includes the relinquishing of rights, or it may not include absolution if reconciliation occurs in exchange for conditions to be met without relinquishing these rights. So basically, absolution is when there's something you are entitled to because you've been treated unjustly. This could be by the state, it could be by your husband or wife, it could be by a business partner, it could be all different things. It could be even one state and another state. But choosing for the sake of peace to give up that right and say, okay, I'm not going to pursue that. It's a very blessed thing to do. I mean, obviously, you have to use wisdom in how you utilize this. But it's part of Islamic jurisprudence that this is there. And forgiveness. In the case of blood rights, the Quran says, but if any remission is made from the brother of the slain, so family members of those who are being killed, then grant any reasonable demand and compensate him with handsome gratitude. This is a concession and a mercy from your Lord. After this, whoever exceeds the limits shall be in grave penalty. Now, the Quran actually allows compensation. I mean, everybody knows it mentions in the Quran that it is permitted an eye for an eye in the case of murder. You still have to go through the courts. You can't go and do it yourself. But although it's permitted that if that person is judged and they can be executed under Sharia law, it's also permitted that the blood relatives of the deceased can say, well, if you give us this amount of compensation, whatever it is they agree, we'll forgive you. And the Quran actually praises this because it's saving a life. Islam places tremendous value on human life. And so much of jurisprudence is revolving around it. The Shaykh continues and says, these definitions concerning the jurisprudence of peace can be found in most books of fiqh, i.e. jurisprudence, in all schools of law. They result in peaceful resolution of conflict without interference from the judiciary to govern by rule of law, and whose decisions might be more difficult to accept. So you see, there's different ways of resolving issues within Islam. It's not all harsh. I mean, obviously the state law, which would be derived from Sharia, would be stricter than how law can be applied by other groups within the society. And Islam encourages people to be moderate with these things and to look for a more peaceful way forward. Because, I mean, if one person wrongs another person wrongs back in revenge, and it just backwards and forwards, you know, it never ends. This was the situation in Medina before, when it was Yathrib, before the Prophet ﷺ and his companions settled there. It was a right mess. And the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ brought peace to Medina. And it became Medina when he did that, because he put the emphasis on peace, on reconciliation, on forgiveness, on kindness. Two principles govern the jurisprudence of peace. One, evaluating effects and consequences. And two, prioritizing averting evil over pursuing interests. Prioritizing averting evil over pursuing interests. When the order of importance is given to pursuing interests and averting evil, the most important is given priority, and so forth until the least important are eliminated. Peace must be established through the expression of Islamic and human values as exemplified in the Sunnah, through comprehensive understanding of the jurisprudence of peace, including its logic, definitions, and rulings, and with the objective of favoring unity and promoting love and harmony. Defamation and demands for takfir, excommunication, must cease. And deviant concepts must be challenged through modern means of communication and education. These efforts will lead to a culture of rationality that values individual and collective well-being and avoids conflict through righteous behavior. Such a culture will allow a Muslim to practice his faith without disturbance. This is the book I've been reading, The Path of Peace. And it's a collection of the speeches of Shaykh Abdallah bin Bayyah. And I mean, what could be more important in today's world, especially when we see what's going on in Ukraine at the moment and other hotspots around the world where wars are going on? Could be more important than learning how we can create a more peaceful world, and how Islam actually teaches us precisely to do that. We need to reclaim Islam from those who have made it out to be a path of war and destruction and terrorism. Islam's far, far from that. But unless we read and understand what our books say, what our teachers say, unless we read the life of the Prophet Muhammad and see how the Prophet Muhammad handled things, and the best of the examples of the past who were known to be on Islam, then we won't even understand. And this is the case with a lot of Muslims, that they don't even know what Islam says on many of these things. When you don't know, you're more likely to accept crazy ideas. But I can tell you for sure, if Islam was what it has been portrayed by the media and extremist groups, I would not be a Muslim. I wouldn't have embraced Islam 22 years ago, and I certainly wouldn't have remained a Muslim. I remained a Muslim because I delved into reading about these things myself, from authentic sources, from historical sources, and read and reflect on what the Quran teaches. I can only recommend that people do this. And inshallah, it will help us all work towards building that more peaceful harmonious world that so many of us want to see and want to live in. Well, let's work on creating it. May Allah bless you all. Have a wonderful evening. If you're in the UK and elsewhere in the world, have a good morning or whatever it is. And Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Have a wonderful weekend.